What's up? We're back. Fed Up
Sir.
Podcast. I'm here with Jordan again. What's up, dude?
What's up, brother?
Fresh back from Mexico, dude. How was it?
Um, it was more than incredibly okay, which is usually the response. But it's interestingly enough, we're talking about fear and I the matador fighting bull stuff. I was reflecting on entering into a place of fear, and what does that mean to consciously choose to go into a place of fear, and I actually thought about that a lot because at the wedding there was a legit bull with saber-toothed sharp horns that could skewer you at the wedding, and they I don't know if it was the Mexican family there was, I'm pretty sure they were very intentionally talking in Spanish, inviting only fellow Mexicans into the ring to fight the bull. But I had just enough liquid confidence.
No way.
And was just not sober enough to think that was a great idea.
That's so funny.
So there wasn't a lot of fear, and that's the thing is I think I was afraid of how unafraid I was, and I was secretly wanting to like feel so alive. And I just got in there with that majestic blanket and just started waving it around, dude.
That's awesome.
And I was just staring right at the bull, and at one point I was even like walking towards it, and in retrospect it was a horrific idea because again I was just not sober enough to not think of like I have a family at home and I need to have a healthy body to go to work and take care of them. But some part of me said, well, obviously you've never done that. You've never done this before, but you're wearing cowboy boots, so you're going to be fine.
That's awesome.
You know, and it was awesome, man. So there's a beautiful moment of fear leading into this, and it definitely provoked a lot of that fight or flight decision making things, and I decided to not take off and stay there. So
well, that's good.
Yeah,
Gets you fresh, ready for our topic.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Like Jordan said, today we're going to be talking about fear and just kind of refresh what we're doing here, talking about fear. We're not talking about fear as two gurus here that are going to lead you out of it, more of just two people that have had too many battles with it and some victories. And it's a matter of if you want to hear the conversation, join the conversation. We'd love to hear from anybody who has anything to say about this topic, and hopefully with some of the truths that we've experienced, it can help. So that's the goal. And, with us and what we do, it's just us being real and being honest and being bold enough to talk about this stuff that hopefully could connect to whoever wants to listen to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think it's really important to, in this conversation, the invitation that's extended is we're not a couple dudes here to express things that we have been educated in from a scholastic standpoint, and we're not going to regurgitate chapters out of books and say you're welcome because I read some dead dude's thoughts and secretly want to copyright them and re-express them as my own.
Yeah.
I think at the heart of what we're trying to do is facilitate a conversation of humility that really stems from experience-based wisdom, which comes from a lot of failures. And I think that's the heart of it is wanting to explore meaning, explore truth from a place of, as much as we can, be infinitely humble and not sugarcoat anything. And to infinitely end every conversation with saying we know we don't know, but we're gonna fucking try to figure some stuff out because until we die we might as well. So
no, well said, man. So jumping into fear.
Yes, sir.
All right. So your bull experience is going to have that fear fresh in front of your mind. Right on. So I'll read you a quote. Start this sucker.
Please.
So it's by David Fishman. He says, fear is the most difficult emotion to handle. You can cry the pain. You can scream the anger, but fear is docked silently in your heart. So what does it mean when you think of fear? When you think of fear as being something in your heart, something that's been, I guess, this controller puppet master behind the scenes.
Yeah.
what is fear when you think about
Well, dude, that's not fair to spin it on me. You've secretly had the incredible advantage of knowing that quote all week.
it?
What it, what stood out to me was the secrecy of it being inside of you and the
Hmm.
inability to express it. But I like the imagery of how it's docked quietly. You know,
Yeah.
it's that little dock like in your heart that's quiet and dark. No one knows you have that dock out in that lake of sadness of tears that's inside your soul. And there's a boat out there that's just floating. And it's called sadness. And
Yeah.
what do you what do you take away from that quote? But what are the metaphorical passengers on that boat staying afloat of
Mm,
sadness?
sure. Well, I think, when it goes back to it, it makes me think as a kid growing up. And, as you grow up, you're constantly testing what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what gets me praise, what gets me in trouble. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
we built in this fear mechanism of all the things that are kind of unknown that you don't know, the things that get you into trouble, things you want to stay away from. It's like you don't want to piss your parents off, so you're scared of doing something that's going to make them angry. It's what I deal with my kids all the time. So I think of what happens with fear it makes me think of Inside Out. I posted a thing on Instagram this week showing that little fear character from the movie if you've ever seen it.
Uh-uh.
But it's there's a part of it that I love about that movie about fear when you think about growing up and like what it can be is it's something that like it's a survival mechanism. Like it's something it's helpful. Like, it shows like even when I'm at work and I have fear like cuz I'm going to step out on this beam or something, right? It's this sense that I have of like, dude, you better know what you're doing here. You better make sure you're tied off, you're ready to go, right? So there's a place for it. It's not just this enemy that you just want to be like, punch fear in the face,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert that talks about that. She's written a book called Big Magic. She's awesome if anyone's ever read that book. But it just shows that like there is a side of fear that is helpful. That it is something where you don't just want to trash it and talk about how horrible it could be because it can be, and we're going to get to that. But there's
Mm-hmm.
a balance with it. There's a balance of like we have to respect it at the same time because it's kept us alive. And just like in that movie Inside Out, it shows the little girl running and she goes right next to a electrical cord and fear's like, whoa, hit the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, helps her from getting hurt, right?
Yeah.
But there's a part where I feel like we have to kind of look at that and learn to respect it before we just totally try to drive it and be like, get rid of fear, screw fear,
Yeah.
because there is a side of it too that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And to look at the other side of it, when you think of reading that quote like I just read to you about it docking in your heart, to me, that's the ugly side of it. That's the side of it where it attaches to you inside. And it's this puppeteer master, like I said, that
Yeah.
you're trying not to encounter.
Yeah.
You don't want to be, you know, you don't want to be doing things out of fear of acceptance, out of fear of rejection, out of fear of losing control, out of whatever fears is motivating you to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the side that I think we really need to talk about too, because the side I'm talking about with respecting fear is there, and I think it's as simply as learning to understand to respect it. And I feel like that's step two. To me, step one is looking at what fear has become for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of the driving force, and that's where I feel like the conversation needs to start.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. No, I mean, those are. I love the. I love the imagery there. I think. Uh, I think it's important how you established the origin of fear for you in your life as a child is directly correlated to your um, responses received from interacting with parents. I think that's the first our most influential environment is that emotional state. We're trying to calibrate in our little heart's compass with those whatever's docked in our soul.
Mm,
We start seeing the pros and cons of the cause and effects of the decisions I make and whether or not my parents are going to like that.
mm,
So I think a lot of what fear, and I think we're going to talk about this eventually, is um, what is the other end of what is the opposite of fear, and we're going to talk about love. I think there's a connection there. So it's interesting how you're correlating your little compass and your little heart is being calibrated to, what should I be afraid of? I should be afraid of being less loved
Mm.
by my parents.
Yeah.
And the thing that's most important to me as a child is compromising my state of value to these two individuals
Yeah.
who are helping facilitate my little life. And uh, I honestly, and not to jump ahead in the conversation, but I think that's forever our little compass in our hearts. Is we are forever basing our decisions. I mean, as a grown ass man now, like I still very much am gauging what I should be afraid of based off of the cause and effect of, will I be equally or less loved after I make this fearful decision?
Yeah.
And I think we're programmed through life and adolescence, especially through social media now. And I mean, thank God we're not kids, man. Like, sweet Jesus, like, I would not make it, man, with how much um, horrific exposure they have to just berating and belittling each other through such powerful avenues. Like, once you post something, it's cemented there.
Yeah.
And kids have to not only be made fun of, but like, it's documented now. Now, in like the books of history of like, you don't fucking matter, that kid wrote that thing and it's on this thing forever. And I think that forever is scribed in our little hearts of, the thing I should be afraid of in life is losing my value and not just not mattering to mom and dad, but whether it's your wife or partner or whatever. It's like everything, and now we're reversing the cycle of, now we have kids. And I would say, and we'll talk about this later, but the thing I'm most terrified in my, like, infinitely, like, I would gladly like be in a ring with a million bulls, you know, that were so starving to kill me. I would so much rather do that than think about hurting my daughter's heart and having her look at me as I'm not someone she can trust to love her. You know, so it's an interesting role reversal we have as being a child and basing our biggest fear off of, will mom and dad love me? And that's how we evolve, is based off of the cause and effect of that. And now we're getting to return that favor and realize, like, I want more than anything to be the caretaker and facilitator of my daughter's heart, trusting that I will take care of her.
Mm.
And there's something very big there with understanding that fear ultimately is just one side of the spectrum of every decision we make in our life. Is we're afraid to lose our perceived value we have in other people, and we're selfishly um, trying to curate more value. And it's like, and that's when we talk about the manipulation of love being a tool to sustain our value with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we're not loving to love fearlessly. I'm not giving you love. Like, the thing I should not do now culturally and societally is, like, I shouldn't sit here right now. I should be afraid to express something that I feel very much for you, which is, as a heterosexual man, you, Ryan, like, I love you to death, man. Like, I genuinely mean that. I am honored to be in your life, and I should be afraid to express that. Like, I legitimately would take a bullet for you, because I believe, like, I would not be here. And I mean this. I don't say this for dramatic effect. I genuinely mean this. And there's only, I'm actually very selfish. There's only a few people I would say that for. But I genuinely mean this. Like, I believe in you so much as an individual. I believe in uh, your value as an, whether there's a God or not, or wherever the fuck reason you're here. I believe you've impacted me so much, and the things you're creating in your life to express meaning and express and pave a path for other individuals and your sons and their friends and other children, other future generations, the things you write about, the thoughts that you have based off of your life experience. I so value that. And I'm afraid that if a bullet was coming at you, like, I would be honored to take that bullet for you, not be here anymore. Cause like, I love you that much. I value you that much. And I value my daughter reading what you write.
Mm.
And that needs to happen, you bastard. So write it. And so I think the thing we're most afraid of is losing our capacity or our market value. of worthiness of being loved. And
Sure.
we make every decision based off of whether or not our market value is going to be fluctuating.
I gotcha. Well, thanks, dude. I mean, one, I feel the same way, man. You're awesome, dude. I just love getting to do this kind of stuff with you, man. So bringing it back to this,
Yes, yeah,
and this topic of fear, it's makes me think of when I was a kid and I grew up. Like, I was terrified of public speaking.
yeah.
So, like, to even think about putting myself on the internet where someone can think and
It's a bad
people
idea.
can write shitty comments
Yeah.
and whatever. I would used to care so much, but now I don't care. I don't care what people think, and it's taken a long time to get there.
Well, and that's a bridge. That's a bridge that most people will never build
Yeah.
in their hearts. People will gladly stay on the side of the canyon of saying, in order to be fearless in my expressing myself on a stage, like that's pretty much everyone's number one fear.
Well, yeah,
It is, like, statistically. So for you, like, you need to give us the blueprint of
what it took to get out of that. But, like, so example, high school, right? I was terrified, dude. There was times I remember I was getting in front of the class, dude. I was the worst one. Like, if I had to compare all the other kids, I was the one like shaking in
Yeah.
front of the class. Couldn't even talk because my voice was like is so shaky that I couldn't even talk.
Yeah.
Like that. Just horrible. I mean, it was just if you saw me, you'd feel bad for me because it was that bad. Like, I just had this horrible fear. And it took so long to get over. And it was just this pain that I feel like I had of not being accepted as I am. And and the problem is when I went in front of the class, it was like everyone could see that. Like, I couldn't hide. I was exposed. And that's where it came out. So for me, it took so much to try to get to the root of that. Because the only thing I just didn't want to public speak. I didn't want to.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I want to understand. Were you afraid? Is it as deep as you were? It's not just I'm afraid of being exposed and potentially being perceived as this thing that can't express myself, or is it even deeper to where it's like I believed what I believed all these negative things about myself.
Yeah.
And I believe everyone would see those things and I would be exposed as someone who's not worthy of being loved.
The latter.
Yeah.
It was me believing that. And it was sad because for me, like, I look back at it now and I'm like, man, I had no reason to think of myself that way.
Yeah.
You know, but I was caught in this cycle of just like, dude, you suck. You're not good at this. You know, it's just this horrible cycle that goes in your mind. And that's just where you get depressed and you just suffer from anxiety. And it's just awful because you get up and you're just like, there's anything in the world you could think of doing when it's that bad. And I can think of so many times it happened. And that's when fear is just it made me realize like where fear comes from. Fear is a response to pain initially. Some painful thing happens in our lives and we learn to run from it. We're like, we never want that to happen again, right? Because we look at it and we're like, man, that was a horrible experience I went through. I never want to do that again. But then what happens is once you're running from fear and you're running from something, there's more and more things you're running from. It flips the script on you. And then fear is the one that causes the pain. Because in reality, you've made a monster that you haven't been able to face. That's why people talk about facing the pain, right? You have to face the beast and realize, oh, the beast wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. But that's the hard part. When you've built the beast in this huge cyclops, you know, that you are just terrified of, fear manifests the pain. And when it's like that, it's extremely hard to get out of. So for me, to go back to that public speaking thing, it took having to expose myself in the ways that I felt the most uncomfortable. I did stand-up comedy is what I did. Because I loved writing comedy.
That makes sense. I'm afraid to public speak, so I'm going to do stand-up
But can you imagine, like, I mean, just like, if you know anything about stand-up, right? You're writing, you're coming up with the jokes. And you're getting up there acting like you're just talking, right? People don't want to realize you're reading a script or going off stuff, right? Yeah. It's a flow. So you have to be really good at it. Otherwise it's painful. When you see shitty comedy, it like hurts you in your gut.
Hurts your feelings.
Yeah.
It makes you not like yourself.
Yeah. Cause you're seeing that person. So for me, it was a matter of like, if I can do this and do it well, then it shows me that I've gotten over that.
Well, it's like the gate key to recognize fear was just an illusion that was you were self-inflicting upon yourself and sabotaging your potential enjoyment of life. But it unlocks for you, well, what else has been justifiably causing me to not experience life?
Mm-hmm.
Like this barrier, this key, this the key to the lock of freedom from this thing that is oppressing me, that is making me suffocate in my own skin suit. Like that's such a pivotal moment for you. Like what excuse me, once you did that first stand up or the second one, at whatever point where you felt like this was a good idea and this was a empowering thing for you, like that kind of epiphany moment, what what did you dissect and diagnose was really the core of, um, or I should say, what do you think the origin of, from when you were a kid to being a grown man, starting to write jokes, to do stand up comedy? It's like that's like the, like you were fighting the dragon in your soul. Like that's the thing you're consciously going to go fight and potentially have irreversible effects. Like if you did the stand up and it was horrible
Yeah.
and it went like horrifically, like that could have had serious ramifications. Oh god, that could have had spilled the tea. Uh, that could have had serious backlash for you. You know, so for you, it's like you got to the point where you couldn't be afraid of this thing. Mm-hmm. You couldn't be afraid of it. You had to at least fight it,
yeah,
and get in the battle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that thing you were trying to defeat truly?
Sure. Well, I think it comes back to learning to see yourself clearly. If you can have enough insight into who you are and where your struggles are, your objective changes. So for me, it's never about going on stage. I could care less if people love what I had to say, if I was shitty comedy. So my objective is not to make people laugh. My objective is to get rid of this shitty, controlling thing that's inside me. And that doesn't change. So the fact is, if I go and I suck, and it's something that, I leave and they're like, dude, at least you tried. You got up there. It's not about that, because to me, it's realizing that, like, I have to figure this out. Because if I don't figure this part out, like these fears that are in there, if you think about that dock part, if they're fears in your heart that are holding you back and controlling you, they will for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like a parasite in there that's just constantly draining you. Maybe just a little bit, but it's in there. So once you realize that, and you realize how much it can affect your life, you're like, I have to get this out of me. And your whole objective, your whole mentality changes. Like even for work, like I was terrified to do anything for work for so long, because I'd second guess myself to death. When you do steel work, dangerous, expensive, hard work, right? And your stuff has to be pretty dang accurate, and it's not easy to do. So when you're someone like I was when I started out, I just didn't want any responsibility. I was terrified of screwing up, because I knew, I was working for my dad's company. We're a smaller company. It means a bigger deal than compared to working for a huge company.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of like, okay, I have to figure this out. Otherwise, I'm just going to be this scared boy on the job site all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what you realize is those moments. So to turn it to you too. So what are those moments in your life where you feel like you've been that scared boy that's had to be like looking that monster as a scared boy and be like, you know what? I have to face this thing.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Oh, Ryan. There's too many, man. There's too many. I would say one that I still deal with on a daily basis by consciously choosing to deal with it is it's so complicated and so complex. So it's hard to express, because it's so like psychologically intertwined with like dark stuff from my past and how I express that. But it's your analogy, how you started out the podcast with that imagery of like fear is the thing that you don't even know how to scream about. It's this thing you can't express. When I was a teenager, the culmination of all the terrified moments I had as a young guy and adolescent, and how fucking afraid I was of believing the truth that I um, was undeserving of love, and I it was not a little tugboat docked in my soul. Like, this was a fucking Titanic that was unsinkable. No matter how many fucking icebergs came along to try to sink this boat, the ship in my soul that waved the flag at the prow, like, it was, I am not worth being loved, and
Mm.
I believed it so deeply, and I couldn't express that. I didn't know how to deal with that, and as a result, for whatever, doesn't fucking matter why, but um, I got asked to do modeling in high school, and that was the first time I believed I had something of value, and it was so dangerous because I was told that I had something of value, and it was aesthetic.
Mm.
And they're like, I don't give a fuck about what's inside of you, but aesthetically, if you put these clothes on and do these whatever poses, like, now you finally got some potential to be valuable, and that's so dangerous, man.
Mm.
And for me, I obviously became obsessed with my body, and long story short, I developed an eating disorder, and the severity in which my eating disorder took over my life was almost to death, and statistically should have been. And um, it took me to it's I so didn't know how to express and deal with my unlovability, and I was so afraid that I would never I would never be loved, that there was I slowly committed suicide with my eating disorder. I so believed my value, I couldn't digest that my physical expression, my screaming
Mm.
behind closed doors, was I stopped eating food, and I became completely emaciated, and got hospitalized, and my body started eating itself,
Mm.
because your body's smart, and it's like, hey, bro, how
Yeah.
about, can you eat like a piece of romaine lettuce at least? And I was like, nope. And as a result, it was like, sweet, well, I'm going to start eating your heart, and your body's brilliant, and it starts feeding off of something. So as a result, my heart stopped working, and went in. And I remember my most my most fearful moment, I would say, for me, was being on the hospital bed and seeing, not even fully coherent, but seeing my parents, the doctor tell my parents, like, we don't know if he's going to make it, and we're going to do everything we can. And I saw my mom, she, for the first time, I visibly saw her be have any combative energy towards my dad, who is my dad was the curator of my self hate, and he was a brilliant orchestrator of that. And my mom, like, just like, get away from my son. And there was this moment where I was just like so confused, and trying to look at her and just be like, what the fuck are you doing defending me? It's like a little too late. Like, I'm not going to be here much longer. So not really, what's this act? So for me, my greatest struggle with fear, um, and how I faced it and dug out of that, was was dealing with my unlovability, my infinite belief that I was not worth being loved, and that took me to a physical expression of self hate, slowly committing suicide. And how I got out of it, I went to a treatment facility, and there was one of the psychologists there told me, you have something inside of you, in your, he didn't say this, but like, your Virgo nature, your extremeness, like, you are extremely killing yourself,
Mm.
because you extremely believe you're not worth being loved. But he said, he's like, you have something inside of you that is like, has the same like psychology of someone who has the capacity to go be like a Navy SEAL, like the extreme ability to endure pain, physical pain, and throw up that many times a day, even if you did or didn't eat anything, and starve yourself. Like, that's physical fucking pain. And I was getting off on the physical pain, and like, because I hated myself, and I was that self mutilation over a long ass period of time. And there's something fucked that came out of that for me, because my mind doesn't work like normal people. And what I heard him saying was, you have the capacity to dig yourself out of this, and basically no one else is going to do that for you. So for me, my my comedy act, my standing on stage and telling jokes, like getting over the fear of like stage act, like comedy for you.
Yeah.
It's like for me, it was like, uh, well, I'm gonna try to figure out if I have worth, if I am worth being loved, and it's gonna take a long ass time to undo the damage I've done on my body. But I think in the same way you started writing jokes, and you're like, if I'm gonna face this perceived fear, I'm gonna fight it, and I'm gonna take it head on. And for me, it's like my way of writing jokes about getting on stage was like, I'm gonna fucking dig myself out of this. And in theory, this smart guy who went to school for a long ass time said, you have the mental structure to do it. And so that's one of many uh, dark ways that I've faced fear head on. And it's like, because the greatest risk I take in facing this, I'm afraid that if I try to find out if I'm worth being loved, if I try to explore that and develop something that's worth being loved, guess what? I might find out that I'm not worth being loved.
Mm.
Maybe my dad was justified in his hate for me. You know, so that's the greatest risk I took, was like, in the same way you're on stage, if they don't laugh, if the jokes aren't good, jokes on me. I tried to be funny. And in the same way, it's like, well, I'm going to try to get physically healthy. I'm going to try to grow my mind, even though I felt stupid my whole life. I'm going to give it a whirl. Why not?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was my arena. So yeah.
So that leads to kind of the the next portion of fear. Is fear has been described so many times as the opposite of love, and like what you just said is learning how to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, how did that look, looking at your disorder, where you were at, slowly killing yourself and stuff like that? How did you beat the fear and find that self-love?
Well, I just went off on a 3-hour tangent. I want to hear from you first, like, because you know, it's very important. You know, there's, even though our examples are radically different, but I think the heart of it is the exact fucking same, in terms of you and I were going on a vision quest of exploring whether or not we are worthy of being on the stage of life, being exposed for who we are. And like you said, you were trying to find yourself.
Yeah.
I had a front row seat to seeing what I was not, and I was told what I was not all the time, to the point where I'm like, this is truth. This is truth. So in the same way, you're like, am I secretly fucking hilarious? And I'm robbing the world of these jokes? Well, buckle up, world. You're welcome ahead of time, because here we go.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's, you know, like, that's the momentum you had, you know.
Yep.
And for me, it was very much like, look, like, I know there's a lot of things inside of me that maybe aren't beautiful. Mm. And I'm fucking exhausted of thinking about how unlovable I am. And it would be pretty fucking dope to give myself the potential of what it would be like to at least be in an environment where maybe I could be valued by someone. Like, what would that be like?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's an exact parallel of seeking one's self and whether or not there's value at the end of that fucking rainbow. You know, am I funny? Am I worth being loved?
Sure.
It's all value. Like, that's the treasure at the end of the rainbow. Like, what is there? And I think it's ultimately finding yourself and finding self-love. So, like, come on, Dorothy, like, get that little ratty dog and let's go find out what's at the other side of the rainbow. Sure. And for you, like, not to just ask you the same exact question, but I want to hear from you. I want to understand from your side of it.
Sure. So when it comes to fear and love, and
exactly,
yeah, and finding it for me, yeah, it took a lot, dude. It was a long process, and it took a lot of work. It wasn't just going up and doing stand-up comedy or figuring out how to work at the job site. It was a lot.
Well, it took such balls, man. Like, for you to say, I'm terrified to the point of shaking and convulsing of giving a 2-minute speech on what Christopher Columbus did in school.
I know.
To being like,
it's crazy.
I'm consciously sitting down writing jokes and I could be filleted in front of people.
Yeah, or even what we're doing
That's incredible, man.
or even what we're doing right now. We're sitting on a
Yeah.
podcast on the internet.
It's
Any
incredible.
Joe Blow can say whatever they want,
Yeah.
and if you care, you're gonna look at and read all this stupid shit that comes
Yeah.
out of most of this stuff that comes from the internet. But to go back to it, it's realizing, dude, that like it's a deep journey, man. It is. It's a hard thing. Like for me, you know, like we talked about before with the faith falling apart for me, it was more of an identity shift that rocked me so hard to my core that it helped me learn how to rebuild a much stronger foundation. And in that, I had to learn what it really meant to be me. What does that mean? You know, struggle with purpose, try to understand all these big things. And in doing so, it caused me to face so many of those fears that were underneath. You know, the fear that I felt like I discovered with my family and why it was so hard to work was like I didn't feel valued. You know what I meant? I felt valued for like, oh, you know, you can fix a computer, but I didn't feel valued for me. And that was like this root thing for me for so long. It was just like the lack of acceptance by those around me for me being me made me not accept myself. So it's a matter of why don't I accept myself? Can I accept myself? How do you do that? And try to find that self-love. And it made me really think of, you know, just imagining a God that was up there. And if he was looking at my life since I was this tiny little baby to this 33-year-old man before you today, what would he think? Right? He's seen me as a kid. He's seen all the struggles I've had, all the things that I've done, all the environments I've been in that helped me have these tough fears. Would that person love this person? And I kept thinking, yeah, I feel like he would, because he would be able to empathize in a way to see. It'd be like the Truman Show, where you could see like why he's upset about something. Be like, oh man, come on, just see the bigger picture here. So when you start to do that, I feel like you can't help but love yourself, but you have to free yourself from so many of these things that keep you from that. And that's where fear comes in, because fear is the opposite of love, because it goes back to that core level where love is at its core is acceptance. It's acceptance of who you are, where you're at, and not asking for anything more but to accept that person right now as they are. You work from there. Fear is built on rejection. It's screw this. I think it goes back to even what hate means, and it's Latin or Greek or something. It's talking about like this deep-seated rejection of what's going on, because that's what hate is. You talk about hate, fear, and all that. Like it's caught in that rejection cycle. So if you're looking at it and some asshole's driving on the road and you're like, fuck that guy, right? And you reject how he's driving or anything else, that's going based on some sort of fear that's buried underneath there. Because if you could get to that other side where you're like loving and accepting, it would be different. You'd look at that guy and you'd wonder why he would do something like that, but you would seek out of a caring, not seeking because that dude just screwed me over. Screw you, man. So I think for me, bringing it full circle was understanding, after rebuilding all these pieces, how much fear was steering the ship, and learning to let love take the wheel. Like Carrie Underwood would say, Jesus take the wheel. But it makes me think of that. But and that's what it was. I mean, it helped where I could learn that I could get up and do stand-up comedy, the worst thing I can possibly imagine, and have an empathy for myself that allows me to do it. Because if I'm looking at it asking anything more than that, I feel like I'm going to fail. But if I'm looking at it going, Ryan, you could do this, man. This is important that you do this, you know, regardless of how it goes. And I feel like it went great, which was nice, but it doesn't matter because I'm looking at it and I'm caring about myself compared to being like, dude, look at you, you can't even give a 2-minute speech about Christopher Columbus. And that's the way I was before. It was a fear mentality. It was a hate mentality. It was a rejection mentality. What you want is the opposite. And that's where you have to take so much work to unpack that. And that's the hard part, dude, because fear is something that can be so ingrained with us. And that's why I love that quote in the beginning, because when you think of it being this thing docked to your heart, it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because what it will do is kill love in your life. And that's why you'll do stand-up comedy, because you realize if you don't, you can't really love yourself completely.
Yeah. You, you came to the point where like you need to at least give yourself a chance to explore that you hypothetically could have reasons to not be afraid, you know? And that hypothetical is what cripples us, because
Yeah.
the pros and cons and what you could potentially lose in the process is exactly the thing you're trying to get. You're like, if I know how to function on little value, what if I really get exposed for who I am and I'm really not valued then? So that's why people's fight or flight always keeps them settling for everything in life and keeps them in a complacent, apathetic place, because it's like you don't have anything to lose if you're not trying, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, to finally answer your question and not just deflect and put it back onto you, for me, the fear and love in how I was motivated to understand whether or not I had value and what, because you need a carrot dangle. You need to get up on stage in the comedy act. You need someone to laugh at your joke and provoke you to keep going and keep trying. Like you need hope. You know what I mean? You need to have hope that you have reasons to not be afraid and terrified. And my story obviously explained the infinite fear I had that I would never be loved or have anything of value to be loved. And I can't believe I'm gonna tell the story, but it's the one that was coming to my mind, and it's probably a bad idea, but fuck it. When I was in the thick of the eating disorder stuff, and there was a time that I uh, took took uh, took took some sleeping pills, and because my soul was tired, and I wanted to fall asleep and never wake up, but I wasn't suicidal.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's kind of a joke, but not to make light of it. But I consciously tell myself like I wasn't suicidal, but I'm like, damn, it would be good to fall asleep and literally never wake up. Like that's how tired I was. I'm like, I don't want to kill myself, but I'm like, I sure as hell don't want to live. Is there like a purgatory, like a nap time purgatory, where I could just like chill and not deal with my life? It's kind of what I was thinking, and um, as a result, go to the hospital, and as another result, because when you do that, I got locked up in a psych ward, and it's probably not a good idea to tell the story, but I think it's important. It's important because this is the biggest turning point for me. Um, in the psych ward, there was I won't say her name, but there was a woman who was by far the most deserving of being there. I'll just say that to be tactful. She was bananas,
Yeah.
like the biggest Chiquita banana on the tree, bro. Like totally gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can imagine, you know, being a young guy and being in a psych ward and having this like, once the sleeping drugs came, got out of my system, and you're very sober and awake, sitting there without shoes in this white ass room with no door, and you're just having this sweet baby Jesus moment of like, this is my life. Like I'm this fucked. I am not able to function as a human being, and I'm locked up, but not locked up because I don't have a door because they need to see me if I try to kill myself. It's this craziest fucking moment. It's so experience based to sit there and be like, what is happening? Because I wasn't crazy. I was believing I was not worth being loved anymore, and I wanted to turn the switch off. So, anyways, back to the Chiquita banana that was in the psych ward. There was a part of me, and this is the most fucked part of the whole thing. They had a movie night in the psych ward. I don't remember which day it was when I was there. Like literal, like, hey, it's Friday night, movie night at the psych ward. And I'm like, sweet, I'm in. Like they pop popcorn, the whole thing. Like the scene was just hilarious. Speaking of
Really?
comedy, like if you want material for jokes, like this was
Really?
the irony of like insane people getting together, like kumbayaing over some
Really?
saturated fat sponges and just enjoying a flick on a Friday night. So I get in there, I sit in the back, and guess what fucking movie they're playing? Patch Adams.
Really?
Patch Adams.
I love that movie.
the whole premise of Patch
Yeah, I
Adams
know.
is a guy who's depressed tries to
I
commit
know.
suicide and
I
goes to a
know.
psych ward. And
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, this is like, what's that Leonardo DiCaprio movie? Like a reality within a reality within a reality. What's that movie called?
Where dreams may come.
No, the one where he's
Wait, who? Oh, Inception. Yeah, I
Inception.
was thinking. I thought you said Robin
Yeah,
Williams. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know why.
And that's what I think.
Yeah.
And that's what I was like, this is. And I hadn't seen Inception, but in retrospect, I'm like, I'm in a psych ward watching a dude trying to commit suicide in a psych ward. I'm like, what is happening? But the turning point for him is he realized he could add value to life by connecting to human beings and really connecting to them. And he exited the psych ward because he's like, I'm not crazy, I'm not suicidal. I just haven't known what I can do to have add value.
Mm.
And he's like, I'm out. And he like went and became a doctor. And okay, it's an amazing story. So me in that crazy state, I'm like, this is destiny. I was supposed to watch this movie, and I'm crazy like that to where I'm like, there's meaning in everything. And for me, I'm like, oh my god, like the Chiquita banana lady. I'm like, she's my gate key to seeing if like I can add value. She's by far the craziest person here. I wonder if I can connect to her and show her maybe she's so crazy because she had too many moments of not believing she was worth being loved.
Mm.
And that's when a woman that's when a human becomes fully crazy is when and I from a personal experience like that's when I was at my breaking point when I no longer believed I was worth being loved. I'm like maybe there's a human under there, a person, but she just doesn't remember how to be a person because she was never treated like a person and never loved and valued. Like this is my thought process. I'm like as like just a emaciated, sad, depressed young guy, and I'm like I love art. There's crayons in the lunchroom at the psych ward. I'm gonna go get some crayons. I'm gonna color her a picture. And this woman always talked about being one of her fantasies that she explored at 3 a.m. in the morning. Like literally everyone, like workers there, like having to like pin her down. Meanwhile, she's telling us how she wants to be a geisha, like the Japanese
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
queen, whatever.
yeah.
So I'm like, I'm gonna color her a picture of her being a geisha, and I'm gonna go hand deliver it to her, and see if that helps remind her that she's worth being loved. I drew the picture in my room, and I was like, oh, I should probably go hand deliver this, and I'm probably gonna get murdered by her, but fuck it, I have to try. So long story short, I went in and terrified, tiptoeing into a room. You're not allowed to be in other people's rooms, but I'm like, I so believed in my vision quest of like reminding this woman that she's worth being loved.
Sure.
And I walked in and I said her name, and she looked at me, and I was like, I drew this for you. And like she's just calm and quiet, and she said, I mean, it's such a crazy clear memory. And she looks at me, and she very consciously just says, she's like, I'm beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, you are. And she just said thank you. And I reverse tiptoed out of there, thankful that I wasn't dead. But like that moment, like I had a very Patch Adams-esque realization that like maybe I can add value. Maybe I have something in me that if my dad knew I had this, maybe he wouldn't hate me so much. It's like maybe there is something in me that I can offer, and that's a lot of what fuels me to be here with you, and what I do the art for this, and that all happened because of that woman in the psych ward, because I had that epiphany moment of realizing, in the same way you got on the stage and said hilarious shit that you orchestrated, like for me, it's like my catalyst moment was I expressed who I was through my art for this person, helped them remind them that they have value, and I connected to something in her. And God knows where she's at now, if she's still alive, but that, I mean, she saved my life to an extent, because I saw that me being me and expressing myself through my art, it saved her for a moment.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what it's the most powerful moment of my life, of realizing that I had nothing to be afraid of. I can express myself and be myself, and that was my vision quest. And that's what I realized. There is nothing to be afraid of if you're being yourself and being true to that. Yeah, there could be horrible ramifications of it, but it's just a perceived false reality.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
anyways, sorry about the hour-long conversation, but
No, it's good, dude. But I think you bring up a big point at the end of what you just said too. That like it, you think of what most of our fears are, and in the end, they are just this made up reality.
yeah,
And it's so hard because they're made up realities, but completely for the person that's experiencing, they're real, right? They're made up, but they're not, and we give them life. You know, it's like we're the one pumping the life into them. We can stop whenever we choose to, but it's not easy to do. And that's when fear can be so damning because we're giving life to this thing that's destroying us,
mm-hmm.
completely unaware of what we're doing. So the question goes down to, so how, when you think of fear and you ask yourself the question of how do I know what fears are running my life, where do you begin to go when you have that thought? Where do you begin to ask yourself the question? And to answer the question, I think for me, the beginning is whether or not you can love and accept yourself as you are at the moment. And if you can't do that, why?
Hmm.
Because I think that's square one. It starts from here. When you're talking about having that hope, like you were just saying, that like you go and you could give a good performance and stuff like that. I think you have to have that hope that like that there is that value of what you're talking about in there, that there is for everyone, regardless of how fucked up you think you are. Because so many people think they're so far gone, no one's ever gonna love me, or whatever. I've done horrible things, or whatever, or I'm so ugly, or whatever you want to do. Why can't you love yourself? What is holding you from that? Because there's something that's rooted in fear that will always cause you to not do that. And the thing for me was realizing that you have to face that. You will get nowhere if you cannot go past that step. If you can't go past step one, how do I learn to love Ryan as he is right now? Doesn't mean he's perfect. Doesn't mean I'm condoning everything I'm doing. It means I understand and accept it. And you work from there so that you can accept the person that you are and be okay with that. Not being like, I can accept myself when I get my degree. I can accept myself when I'm not an alcoholic anymore. I can accept myself when my kids love me. Whatever it is for you, it has to be, I can accept myself as I am. As I am.
Unconditionally.
Yeah. Unconditional acceptance of you is where you begin. And then you work from that. You work from that. So if you're an asshole driver, yeah, accept. You're an asshole driver. Do you know why you're an asshole driver? Probably because you were taught by an asshole driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why you're an asshole driver and why you get pissed at people on the road or whatever it is. Or there's some other, like you learn to understand why you are the way that you are. And that's where it begins. If you could just seek understanding in here. But I think that's so important when it comes to fear, because fear is something that it's so hard because we will run and procrastinate and find so many things to numb ourselves constantly because we don't want to face that step one. We don't want to figure out why we can't accept ourselves. And there's so many different things to distract you and keep you feeling good or whatever it is. Or, oh, I found really good when I'm working out. Oh, I feel finally have that self-esteem I'm at. Yeah, I just gotta keep working out, looking good. Okay, now you're rooted to that. That fear's still there. You're just covering it and burying it deep under the soil. It's there. The point being is, unless we face this stuff, unless we see that, like, I believe the step one of learning to love yourself and let those fears go, you're going to be captive to it. You just are. And that's what we're seeing in our world. You see people that are just scared to death of so many different things. And they're all what you just said, those false realities.
Yeah.
Those false realities that we're making constantly. And it's a matter of just taking a second and just being like, man, maybe this judgment I've made of something that was so painful or hard or so degrading about myself isn't real. Think about that. And it's just like, that's where freedom will come.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're trying to talk about, getting to face that. You can learn, the easiest way to learn about it is like What pisses you off? What makes you sad? What are those all those emotions we have are there for a reason. They're like pointers.
Mm-hmm.
Someone cut you off driving and you get pissed, that's showing you something about yourself.
Yeah.
If you're mature enough to realize it.
Yeah.
If you watch a sad movie and it makes you bawl like a baby, it's hitting on something. But I'm just saying that, like, when it comes to fear and doing it, it's just exploring the soul, trying to understand those parasites that are attached to our heart. Because if you don't, it'll destroy you, and you're just gonna live some fragmented life, broken till the day you die.
100%.
And hopefully, whatever your brokenness is, isn't super destructive, because you're at the mercy of whatever that parasite is.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to be there.
No. No. Well, I've thought a lot about fear this week, and not just because of the bull. I think the bull was secretly afraid, you know. No, but I think when you get at the heart, like I did this full circle, like complete thought. It felt like it was getting lost, but it came back to me. I was looking in the mirror, and metaphorically, and looking in the universal mirror of like all of our souls, like what are we so fucking afraid of? Like what is the universal fear that is robbing the human experience of experiencing being fully human? And there, not to get off on the hero tangent again of Marvel movies and what we idolize in that, but I'm going to say something, it's going to sound odd probably, but again, after I explain it, it might sound odd, but so be it. But I think we are so fucking afraid of being fucking amazing. And that sounds odd because there's this defensive nature we have to say, no, I mean, I'm trying to be fucking amazing in my life. Like I'm working towards that. What do you mean? Why would I be afraid of that? If I'm not working this hard to become nothing. Like, What do you mean I'm afraid? And I think we're terrified of what it would mean to actually have the responsibility of being a Batman or a Wonder Woman or a Thor. Like, to be fully manifested who you are, expressing yourself fully, like to the greatest degree, like that is a massive weight of like, if I have this much power, if I have this much access to be this whatever, then I have to kind of maintain that. And what if I can't? And if I become that great and that fucking amazing, and if someone exposes me for not being that amazing, then I'll lose all that. So there's this dance with, I go sit and watch Marvel movies and eat 7,300 calories of butter popcorn because I fantasize about being amazing and I'm vicariously trying to live that life through this superhero. And then I'm going to go back to my life that I've settled for. Yeah. And then I wait for the next thing I can vicariously, gain 2 pounds in 2 hours and watch this hero. And then I go back to my reality. And I think we as a culture and as a human species, we are creating the entertainment that is a reflection of the perceived reality that we desire. So there is an infinite amount of insight into the trail that's not easy to get lost on. Like, it's very obvious where the breadcrumbs lead to seeing what is it that we're terrified of. Well, we're entertained by the thing that we most desire, yet we sabotage ourselves daily, crippling ourselves, saying we are the victims of all of these things, and I don't have the power in me to take ownership of my life and become a fucking superhero. And the convenience of settling and being a victim is, well, because this happened to you, because you were touched as a child and you're justifiably, you never have to be in a relationship and be fully intimate again. And you have the right to never experience intimacy at that level again because you were hurt. I'm not minimizing that, but I'm just saying the things that break us from experiencing fully all the appetites and desires we have in our life and fully being ourselves ultimately. And this is not I don't say this lightly, and I'm not saying this from a place of having figured it out, because I fucking know what not to do, because I have failed in so many ways, and I still continue to sabotage myself in so many ways, and I still want to be quiet. I still don't want to stir the pot, because I don't want to bring attention to myself, because I'm like, if I do bring the light and attention to myself, if I attempt to be excellent and attempt to express myself through my art, through conversations with you, and be on a platform where I'm like, this is me, and I'm not fucking sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not intending to offend anyone, but I am intending to be myself, and I'm not sorry for that.
Yeah.
And if you are yourself and you are being the truest version of yourself, that quote you said to me, I don't know if it's Socrates or Plato, who it was, but it's the man pursuing truth is like the man standing on a street corner willingly getting fucking torn apart.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the question is, am I afraid to be truly true to the path of becoming me on a daily basis?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is fuck yes, we are. And we have good reason, because we are told we have to be all these fake synthetic versions of ourselves. Like you said, there's something inside of us that culturally is made this puppeteer telling you, like, be this, dance for these people this way, become this for them. If you want value, don't be yourself, just be the thing that people want you to be, and settle for that synthetic thing. Yeah. But I argue, and I've experienced this, is I have lost most people in my life. The more I pursue truth, the quieter my life gets, because it exposes how thoroughly people want me to be who I used to be, because I was facilitating and enabling them to think that I could be this thing for you. I can make you happy. I can make you laugh, and I could do all these things, and you love me, right?
Yeah.
And I've, as a byproduct, like I've said this, and I don't say this from a victim mentality, but like, in order for me to stay sane every day, I had to stop communicating with my family. And I don't know if I will ever connect to them again at some point in the future. Honestly, I don't, not to say I don't care, but I'm like, for me to love me and stay sane, I need to not have them in my life and remind me that they weren't there for me in the way that I needed them to be. Like when I was going through my cancer stuff, and I'm not judging them. I understand why they function the way they did during that period, but I'm like, they remind me that I'm not worth being loved unless I'm a certain type of version of me. And I am focused on loving me. So in order to do that, I'm responsible to put myself in environments where people say, you are enough today. You are.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck yeah. Well, there's no one around. And guess what? That's okay. Because I'm learning to be self-loving to the extent that I don't need to take anything from anyone.
That's right.
I'm not afraid to be quiet and be alone, because I'm like, in the same way you stepped outside of yourself and looked at yourself through God's lens, and you said, young Ryan, you're a little stallion in the making, and you're deserving of being loved, and you're pretty fucking rad. So stop beating yourself up, and you get back into yourself, and you're like, you know what, you're right, God. And in the same way, I have to vicariously look at myself, whether it's God's lens or this whatever is objectively out there. I'm like, I try to look at myself the same way I look at my daughter every day. I'm like, I love you no matter what. You could do everything wrong in your little life journey, but my love is going to be extended to you. And I will accept you wherever you're at in your life. You can hurt my feelings. Hell yeah. And I can be disappointed. Hell yeah. But my love is not conditioned on anything. You're just alive. I'm pumped about it. So I try to give that to myself every day. And that's what's allowed me to have the fearlessness to be here with you and express who I am. Because I'm like, I don't care anymore. Compassionately. I compassionately say, I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks, because I'm in the business of being who I am. And it's a lonely path, but it's not lonely because I have learned to enjoy myself. So in a schizophrenic way, I enjoy hanging out with myself. You know, and I think that's ultimately what I don't have to go get the thing from other people anymore. I don't have to take it. When I'm with people, I can actually give them from a place of abundance, of self-love.
That's it.
And that's why they feel so empowered. And I know it's powerful. And that's why I have to stay quiet a lot in public settings, because I'm like, I know once I open my mouth and I connect to people, it's going to be sincere. And they're going to be like, wait, you don't want to take anything from me? And I'm like, no, I'm actually just pumped about you. And it's a drug, bro. It's a drug. So anyways.
But it's rare, dude. And I mean, that's part of where you get to a place of fearlessness is when you are becoming love. That's what happens. It's it's just one or the other, right? If it's a teeter totter,
Well,
that's how it
it's
goes.
specifically you're becoming loving of yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's becoming, it's taking those things, self and worthiness of love, like those things coexisting and becoming emulsified. And that's important. It's because that's the hippie shit. People say, how do you just become love? What does that mean? It's like when you are loving of self,
Mm-hmm.
it's that relationship with self. You are love, not in a hippie,
It
like
sounds hippie,
openly
totally.
openly offering this
Yeah,
fluffy
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's like, no, you are love when you're patient with yourself every day. And when you wake up every day, you're like, I'm more than enough today.
That's it.
I'm gonna do my best. And some days it looks better than others, but I'm just gonna continue trying.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what's so alluring about God. I feel like God is that vehicle that we use to get there. We see God as love. God is love. Becoming love is something we seek to do. Where it is so much of the answer of how we get out of fear. And we could talk about our perspectives of faith and everything like that, but the point being is like connecting to love, connecting to this is something that is so far greater than I feel like getting caught up in so many of the small details of whatever. So with fear and wrapping this up, I do think that it's a lifelong battle, man. Even when you have great strides, there's still those moments that suck you right back. But it's something that we just got to keep going and doing. And the whole point, I feel like, of talking about this is just to realize why you want to fight the battle. And the more you see the truth surrounding this topic, the more you will realize there is no other option. You have to fight the battle.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to lose. You're going to lose
100%.
the war. And it's just sad when you see so many people losing that war. And the goal for us, at least I could say for myself, is to talk about this stuff to help winning the war so that
100%.
people can break free, that
Yeah.
we can have tremendously whole people around us where you can be exactly what you're talking about, be in a conversation and just give to somebody, not being like, oh man, you work at Nike, you could get me an employee store, badass,
Yeah.
where you're giving like, oh man, what's going on with you, man, like just be there, be present, be selfless in a sense because you are so secure in yourself.
Yeah.
So
I need to, I want to be selfish. I know you want to wrap it up, but I need to ask you some of your thoughts you share with me.
sure.
You say, because I think this is really important to kind of close with, is you say fear can become the devil in your ear, whispering and controlling you. How do we recognize its voice? And I think that's the thing. If you're listening to this conversation, I think that's ultimately what you're wanting to take away is recognizing and differentiating, like, that's not me. There's something that has influenced me. The devil, quote unquote, hypothetically, is provoking me to be fearful of something. So how do you specifically recognize that voice, and what would you say and encourage other people to that giving them downloading that voice recognition hardware
Sure.
to see, like, is this fear, is this a false reality, or is this really real?
Yeah. And I feel like it's come with practice, where practice, practice, practice. Be with yourself, hear those voices. You could see the character behind it when you're present with it enough. And that's what happens when you see that little voice like, you can't do that. What are you thinking? It's like, that's that fear bullshit. Right? Or you have that little whisper that's like, you can do it, Ryan. Come on, man. That's the voice, right? But it's hard because unless you're present and I don't care if you meditate or whatever you want to do, journal, whatever it is, whatever gets you there, to be present with what's going on in here or wherever it takes place, you're only going to recognize it when you're there. That's like in anger management, a lot of times they teach you like, when you feel that anger rising, like if you could just like get to a place where you're hearing the voices in your head and you're trying to see who's speaking, and you kind of name it, right? When you feel like it's like, oh, this feels like this character, this character, this character. It almost helps. And that's a really I don't know,
No, it's great.
immature way I feel
No,
like
it's
of doing
great.
it. But for me, when it gets like that, it's like you can almost tell and feel when you feel like it's that whisper of doubt and fear and the thing that's trying to hold you back. It's that parasite trying to latch on. Like, hey man, come on, let me latch right on.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard because with fear, and it goes back to that first being what David, whatever his last name, said is the hardest emotion is because fear prompts, right? When you have that fear, you're like, oh no, I don't want that to happen. Oh
Yeah.
no. And next, that's how the parasite, next, it's on you, right? So to hear that voice is to realize, okay, so what is this trying to, what's its end goal here when I hear this whisper? Like, where's this going? Like, what's he trying to get me to do? You're like, oh, okay, this is horse shit. I see where this is coming from.
Yeah.
No, you ain't getting in here today, right? Because it's constantly there, especially where we live, dude. Turn on the TV, just listen to all those commercials. I mean, it's just it's everywhere. You just
Nonstop.
need this, you need this, you need this. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it is something where those whispers are there and it's constant. It's a constant barrage, and unless we know those those voices and those what those whispers and who they are and what's behind it, it's it will it will slowly get you down that bad path. So yeah, I think a big part for me in kind of getting to that and to answer your question on how you detect is one, practice of knowing those voices, and two, even when you're in the heat of battle, like at work or something, just ask like, so what is the end goal here if I listen to this little whisper, right? Because it's constant and it's just I don't know. It's practice takes perfect because I mean I fall victim to it every day, dude.
Oh
I
yeah.
get stressed out like I was telling you about yesterday,
Yeah.
right? I mean it
Well,
does.
justifiably.
Yeah, but you get fearful. You get so fearful when there's just so much money and exposure and shit like that where it's just like, yeah, it's easy to listen to that voice. But it goes back to you too. There is a respect side to fear where you can honestly see that sometimes that fear is in there to give you the respect you need for what you're about to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something we can appreciate and accept. It's the other side of fear where it's like, you can't do this shit. What are you even
Yeah.
thinking? That's the side that you need to reject and be like, no, you need to get the hell out of here and quit talking to me like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know if that answers your
No,
question.
absolutely does. You're essentially saying fear, fear, you don't need to be afraid of fear. Fear is actually an asset. It will forever be a voice, but it's having that voice recognition strategy to realize, is there justification to listen to this voice? And is this voice going to get me the end result? And sometimes listening to fear is a wise decision
Mm-hmm.
because it's a compass. It's saying the outcome of this decision, you should be afraid of it, whether it's because if being afraid of making compromised integrity decisions at work or
Yeah.
in relationships, I mean, you should be afraid of things,
Yeah.
you know, because there is a lot of, because there's that metaphorical stuff and, you know, Satan being a snake and like that allegorical like imagery of like the venom and, you know, like there's that whisper and the slitheriness to it, but it's actually fear is it can also be an ally.
Mm.
And you can fear will always you'll always be a there'll always be a schizophrenic relationship with fear. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
So
But
might as well welcome it in and like feed it and nourish it and say, hey, if you I'm gonna you become very negative if I pretend that I have a lock that's not going to allow you in. You're going to keep breaking in
that's right.
in the middle of the night and just like threatening my life. So I'm going to try to let you in, understand you, hear you out, and, you know, feed you.
But I think that's you think it like what you just said with the compass, dude, and it makes me think like with the compass you're using it to go somewhere, or right?
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to find something, right? The goal with fear is like fear can keep you in love, but it can also drive you from love. Love is what the target is,
Yeah.
and that is the key point. So fear can actually help you have the respect you need to be in this loving place, but it can also be this place that's driving you away from it. And that's what you tell. You build your compass to try to keep you in that loving, centered place.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key point because otherwise you're trying to judge it. But I think when you build your compass around that loving place, then it becomes easier and easier with more and more practice.
Such a good point to end on, dude.
Well, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, as usual, I said too much, and I'm not afraid to say that. Yeah, no, man, I in a fearless way. I just, I'm just so honored to be here and discuss these things with you, man. And I love you to death. And um, I love that I have the opportunity to explore fearlessly topics that enable us to do the thing we're all trying to do, which is find ourselves.
Yep.
You and I are trying to co-create the exploration of self.
Yep.
In a universal language. So yeah, and what's beautiful is there's nothing to be afraid of. Exposing yourself to the world.
That's right.
Maybe our compass will show us that this is a bad idea at some point, but I don't think it will be.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to accept whatever ramifications come of it, because I know that I'm being genuine and honest, as you are, with exploring self.
That's right.
And inviting everyone else to say there's no fear in exploring self.
Whoever wants to.
Yeah, by all means.
All right. Well, that's it. Thanks for all who joined, and we'll probably be back next week with something else.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Take it easy.
Badass. Good point.